The fact that the assistant to the city manager, a man whose career had been completely devoid of political aims, while at the same time entirely subject to the political fancies of those that he served, had, on the eve of retirement, purchased a house not 15 feet into the neighboring town, did not go unnoticed and was seen by some as a contemptuous snub to the city in which he'd been born and was raised and had lived all his life. He's Run for the Hills read an op-ed piece in the paper next day, the author of which, well known for her writing that railed against what she constantly called that pit of corruption, the city itself, decried the fact that the best of our citizens and fine civil servants were always being cast out by that mouth-breathing mob of dimwits and morons we call city council. Perhaps, she had written, had the assistant to the city manager only gone that much further, to Florida, say, or else Arizona, the move itself might never have caused the stir that it has. But of course he did not. He chose to stay put, but to change his zip code. And so we must wonder if it isn't a statement, a slap in the face. She, for her part, or at least so she wrote, but a humble reporter, was fully in favor of just such a gesture, stating quite plainly that the city deserved to be drained of its best. The members of council who once said that they had the utmost respect for him whom they'd called the genuine article were now quoted as saying, "Good riddance to him," though in more veiled terms. A neighbor who claimed to be in the know had called the move a pragmatic decision, citing the fact that, as far as she knew, the position itself never really paid much, and the neighboring town was actually cheaper, had far fewer taxes, and, quote, better air. But then again, a bowling buddy, a barber by trade, was overheard blaming the hordes upon hordes of despicable immigrants for overrunning our town, going on to explain that he and his husband had also been thinking of, quote, getting out. At one point or another, an old newspaper clipping was posted online and passed around, a second-page feature from 30 years prior in which the assistant to the city manager, at the time still a clerk, had thrown off his coat in the dead of winter, a 10-degree day, and dove into the river to save a, quote, bum from drowning to death. A hero, they called him, and man of the month, two meaningless titles bestowed upon all at some point or other for the smallest of feats. What on earth were you thinking, the reporter had asked, suggesting, of course, that no reasonable person would have done what he did. But the assistant to the city manager, now sick as a dog, politely replied that he'd thought nothing of it. I was, he said, simply on my way home, my usual route, when I glanced up to see a man keel over and fall into the river, the ice-cold water, and the next thing I knew I was down there myself. The bum, of course, the reporter reported, was utterly crazy, kept muttering numbers, and would not give a statement. 27, he said when they asked him his name. 32.27. Later that month, a plan was proposed to have railings installed to end what was suddenly called an epidemic of drownings. According to the plan, a commemorative plaque bearing the name of the assistant to the city manager would be affixed to the bench that overlooks the spot where the bum had gone under. But budget constraints prevented these plans from gaining much traction, and they soon fizzled out. Why this particular article and not some other was being passed round, I really don't know. But the comments online would seem to suggest that even though hundreds of plaques have since been installed all over the city, not one of them bears the name of the former assistant to the city manager. A crying shame, one commenter wrote, claiming to have been a cousin of the bum that was saved. But for all of the feathers that this alleged rebuff had ruffled downtown, and for all of the rumors that have since sprung up, the former assistant to the city manager, quiet by nature, never dignified them. Whenever asked why, regarding the move, he'd simply replied that he'd been happy to have served the city he loved for as long as he had, and left it at that. But of course, the fact that he decided to move another 2 houses down when 3 city surveyors came through his backyard and discovered the fact that the official town line did not in fact lie where it was thought to have lain for the past 100 years, but rather beyond where his new house now stood, did nothing to quell the spread of such rumors.